Half a day, everyone. My name is Danielle Lee, and I will be presenting my final research project on the viability ratio. Now, what is the viability ratio? You calculate viability ratio by taking the total expendable net assets and dividing that by the total plant-related debt. In simpler terms, the expendable net assets is essentially the spendable assets, and you're going to divide that by the long-term project debt. The purpose of this ratio is to manage the spending of resources in comparison to the amount of long-term debt. And essentially, we're going to use this to measure how well the institution is fulfilling its mission. For the viability ratio's benchmark, we use a benchmark of 1.25 based on NACUBA, which is National Association of College and University Business Officers. And then we have a warning trend of any ratio that is under 1.25. And another warning trend is also a decreasing ratio or a decline. The institution that I analyzed is the University of Guam, and I included the foundation, the endowment foundation, which is a component unit, and so we included the net assets and debt from that. And the first thing you notice about this graph is how odd it looks, and this is because the blue bars, which is in the negative, is the spendable resources. This means that they do not have any spendable resources as it is in the negative, and that's already a very bad sign. Another thing you notice with the red line, which is the viability ratio, is that this is also negative. This means that the University of Guam does not have enough spendable resources to cover their debt, and the ratio itself is generally a decline, as you can see, which is another warning trend. Specifically, if you see from 2017 to 2018, there's a sharp decrease, which I will explain the reason in the next slide. As for the analysis, there's not enough spendable resources to cover debt, as I said earlier. This also means that UOG may not have enough funds to cover future projects, and they might not be able to get any more loans to cover future projects, which is very bad for an institution. And another important point to notice about that graph is that the spendable resources are in the negative. This is very dangerous for any entity or institution, and the best thing to do is to get out of that red zone. And the reason for the negative balances and the extremely bad warning trend is and the sharp decrease from 2017 to 2018 really is because of some changes and updates to the reporting standards. The purpose of these changes is to increase the purpose of decision-making usefulness of accounting, specifically in the institutions. And so one of them is GASB statement number 75, and this sharply increased liabilities because this made it a requirement to report the full pension liability and other post-employment benefits liability. And then the FASB ASU 2016-14 is regarding nonprofit accounting, and this means because of this change, essentially there was a very large decrease in spendable assets because there used to be 3 classifications, and they basically shortened it to 2, which made spendable assets decrease for almost all institutions across the nation. Now, moving on to recommendations, I would recommend first to increase tuition. As a student myself, I obviously am not favorable of this. However, due to UOG's kind of very bad warning trend and very bad viability ratio, this may be necessary, and it was already UOG's plan to increase tuition anyways. They just delayed it due to federal funding. However, I believe they should use that federal funding to stimulate students directly through direct deposit. This is because the restrictions of those funds is very flexible, and as long as it helps the students, it can be used. And I believe that increase in tuition should be at least by 8% due to the inflation being 8%. Normally, institutions actually double the inflation and increase tuition by double of whatever the inflation amount is for that year. However, obviously a 16% increase would be just ridiculous, so I think 8% should be the minimum. I also believe that UOG needs to increase unrestricted endowments, and this is through marketing the need through the social media and main UOG website. I also think they need to advertise incentives of being a donor more, and then they also need to value public recognition through physical recognition on walls and the university buildings, and also through announcements. And I also believe that UOG should fundraise to decrease debt. I think UOG should plan a gala and sell tickets for table and entry, and I think there should also be a creation of honorary leadership positions for the fund to recognize major donors. And that would conclude my presentation. Thank you.